Call to order the Wednesday, May 3rd, General Government Committee meeting. Would you call the roll, please? Do we do that? No.
We can if you would like to.
No, okay.
Chairman Weed.
I'm here, that's good enough.
Glad to hear that national.
Not the way it works.
I'm going to make a minor adjustment to our agenda. The mayor has a couple of minutes he'd like to spend telling us something interesting, so.
Okay, now I got a visit from, first of all, I got an email from Mr. Soto from Japan wanting to know what the status is of our sister city with Japan. And I did not know we had a sister city arranged. And apparently at one time we must have with Japan. I know Mexico we did, but we had with Valdai, Russia. So he asked if he could come by if he was in the United States, and I said, sure. So he drove his bike from Colorado Springs, bicycle. He came to Kathy first. His name is Shunsuke Sato, and he has a company called Telesis. So he brought us gifts. He was bearing gifts, and I'd like to, I don't know if we can keep here at City Hall, but pass them around. Here is a, this is a piece of, made in this town. It's outside of Tokyo, by the way. Fine scarf. Okay, pass that around. And then there's another one here. Again, this was made in their town. This is similar as the artwork on it. We picked that up. Okay. Then he presented me with these. Now, what do you think they are?
Shoes.
And I said, oh, slippers. They don't match.
They're not.
And he said, no. And I said, well, what are they? And then he was trying to explain to me, and they're ping pong paddles. And I didn't know that.
Oh.
And I don't know, they're ping pong. He's going like this with the paddles, and I'm going, okay, what is that? They're ping pong paddles. And so pass those around as well. I thought they looked like mismatched slippers. So, but anyway.
So we're going to play a ping pong match
These
after
are,
the meeting's over?
Where's the balls?
Well, it depends.
Murphy's got one, I'm
You'll have to talk to Chairman Weed on that. But I thought I'd pass these around. I thought that was pretty neat. We had sort of a nice conversation. Here is the latest. Daily Record may want to recognize the Japanese newspaper, which he presented me as well. So that was my day Monday. Anyway, okay. Here's your stuff.
And we did present him with a
We give him a pen?
and a glass. He wanted one of those glasses.
Oh,
that
he
had our
wanted a
city.
glass? So Kathy gave him a pen and a glass from Canyon City, and he was going to ride his bicycle back to Colorado Springs and return back to Japan. So I suppose we should keep this here in a chest or something here. So
You're probably watching this.
that's it.
We put it.
Thank you.
All right.
Put it out in the case.
Yeah.
Thank you, Preston. Okay, let's get on with the agenda now. The first item on the agenda is the development exactions. And Tony, you want to get us started on that?
Yeah, Catherine and our staff here is all lined up. In fact, before we start, Dina Svetlik is our new community development director.
Welcome, Dina.
Welcome.
Welcome. In fact, right now, you guys look like twins with your glasses.
Don't they look intelligent?
I'll be right back. I'll get my glasses out of the truck.
Yeah.
Be right back.
Did you see Adam?
But back in March, you had several discussions about reviewing the city's exaction policies. There seemed to be some general consensus about reducing to as a policy exactions being imposed on major site plans and major subdivisions. And so to that end, Catherine has drafted a memo, and we have Adam, Terry, and Dina that will weigh in as to what that represents.
Catherine, would you like to summarize?
Sure. So as we've talked about, there's several different types of conditions imposed on certain. Two types of impact fees.
Much better.
All right. Can you hear me now? Okay. So, and we've, as Tony alluded to, we've had 2 discussions, and the memo that you have in front of you kind of lays out what we believe council would like to see happen. But we wanted to kind of refine that discussion and make sure these changes have far-reaching impacts, and once you walk back from them, they're difficult to put back in place. And so we just want to make sure that we're on the right track and we communicate to Planning Commission, who will be making those changes, what council would like to see. So that's why we're having this probably final discussion regarding this, but I wanted to lay out what the actual changes might look like and make sure that we're all on the same page. I'll leave it up to Dennis how he wants to start, but we can start talking about site plans. That seems to be the biggest issue, and I think Terry's got some input on that as well. So as I lay out in the memo, it's our impression that a change in use should not be triggering these kinds of conditions that you all are concerned about. And so, there's some options in the memo, and I think Terry's got some ideas about how to take the change in use out of the site plan process and just make it more objective rather than the subjective language that's in there that I discuss in the memo. So.
All right, well, let's start with site plans.
Okay. So right now, what Terry's looking at is maybe some, criteria where it says, like, if the building changes X percent or it adds X parking spaces, then that's going to trigger the only type of site plan that's going to be left, which is the standard site plan. Okay, so we'd be getting rid of the exemption and the waiver and the minor site plan. All of that would go away. And so you'd have basically just what triggers a site plan. And it'd be very straightforward. And I'll turn it over to her. She's got some ideas, and it's better to come from her. So
sometimes these site plan requirements have been the bane of my existence, to tell you the truth. And I think that simplifying it is going to be very helpful. So what we're talking about is having exemptions. Everything would be exempt unless it has to go through a standard site plan process. And a standard site plan process should probably answer about 8 questions. For instance, and I will throw this out to you, and then you can hash this out or let us know what you think. So we have a site, and let me lay the groundwork. If we have a vacant site where a building gets constructed, that automatically is a standard site plan. It will go through the site planning process, and the exactions that we've talked about would apply, because it's a vacant site and we're developing it from scratch.
And that's if something's demolished. So there's something there, it's demolished completely, that's considered a vacant site.
Right.
Okay, and this
So,
applies to across the board.
Across the board.
Industrial, commercial, residential,
Industrial, commercial,
okay, and
And
residential 4 units and up.
right, multifamily. Yes.
Yep.
Can you explain that to me? I'm not sure I understand why an existing site that had a business, something on the structure, that now that structure is demolished, we're essentially saying you start all over again.
That's correct. It becomes a vacant site.
Wouldn't the site can change depending on what has happened to the land since the demolition.
Well, that would be a use change.
And, well, just the nature of the
And
land
then what you're
itself
building
and what you're building on it.
I mean, it may have had a house on it, for instance, that was 2,000 square feet. Maybe it's a very large site, got rezoned to commercial, and now you're going to put a 15 or 18,000 square foot retail spot on it. It should go through complete site plan.
And another thing about that is if they tear it down and it was an old existing structure, it's going to bring it more up to codes. It's going to bring it more into the
Right,
theme.
so let's say it's a restaurant with a drive-through. They tear it down and build a new restaurant with a drive-through. The old drive-through may have been non-conforming.
Okay. And that gives for parking and for the dumpster situation and stuff we're talking about right now. It's just a way of upgrading the city one site at a time if they want to tear it down and go new. That makes perfect sense to me.
Okay. That's really the easy part. The second part of this is where you're redeveloping a site and not completely. So if you're making additions to a site or you're changing the use of a site where like additional parking might be required or something like that. So our question would be, where is the cutoff point to an addition? So I would like to kind of get your thoughts on that. If you have a building and you're adding on to it, is there a percentage threshold by which site plan would then kick in? So
I read 30% in here, is that?
Was it 20 or 30?
there was 20. There was 20%. Now that I'm not absolutely sure. We could also add a parking requirement along with that. But that would also kick in the standard site plan process. So if you have a small building and you're going to add 50% to it, it would make sense that the standard site plan process should apply to that. If you're going to change the use of a building, this gets a little complicated too. If you're changing the use of a building from something that is allowed to something that is allowed in the code, which is by right, should a standard site plan apply to that as well? Because what you may be doing is increasing the impact of that site on the surrounding area. And a lot of that has to do with parking, noise, screening, any number of things that really should be evaluated when a site changes. Now, we did just recently have this issue around a change in use for Hale Pet doors. And that was met with resistance. And that was a change in use from what may have been a lumber yard and some other uses in between to an industrial use that actually was not allowed by the code but required a special review use. So you have changes that go from by right to by right, or changes that might be to a conditional use permit that might be required, or to a special review use. Those also can trigger or not standard site plan.
I
Like to know
mean,
what
I
your
can see
thoughts
where
are.
this is, I don't know about what's the right answer here, because my first impression is to say, if you're changing from a use by right to another use by right, you shouldn't have to go through it. But, and like you say, there's other impacts. And
Terry, could we have used this same setup on a particular building that's a commercial building when we went from a restaurant to 2 medical facilities? Could we have used this then when they set up and it went from 1 use to 2 other uses?
Are those used by right, though, in the zoning?
If the zone,
Nevertheless, if it's a change in use,
it would be a change in traffic, a change in
it could very
signage.
well be. And those are things that are evaluated between the planning and engineering departments.
But the question is whether you want us to do that or not.
And if you want us to apply a certain threshold, when that would apply.
Well, by all means, for what I'm thinking of, because the parking tripled, the traffic tripled.
That falls under the parking arrangement. though,
Well, that
right?
would fall under
Does.
the same things that she's talking about, how it would impact the surrounding areas, which that immensely did.
Yeah.
So are we
It doesn't
talking
mean that
about
the
a
use,
percentage?
however, and let's
Okay.
clarify, doesn't mean that the use would not be allowed.
No, yeah.
It's just that those uses or those impacts would have to be mitigated somehow.
Yeah. That's what I understand, okay. Are we talking about a percentage, though, of the percentage of how it would be?
And that's in the site plan standards right now. So
Okay.
for instance, if it's a change in use, but it doesn't trigger additional parking by about 20%,
Okay.
then you're exempt from site plan. If you require more than 20% of what was required before, then you go through site plan.
Okay.
And we can certainly apply that same standard.
I think what Terry's getting at is that kind of objective, subjective standards that are in the site plan, right? So what you're talking about, I think most people would say, that's a huge change. This should go through some kind of process. But you get closer and closer, like Hale Pet Door, where you have a lumber yard / other uses, and then, a light industrial use. Well, maybe that change for some people isn't enough. Some people it is, some people it isn't. And so that's where I think Terry's leaning towards just subjective factors so that it's clear, everybody understands what the numbers are. So,
And we can certainly come up with that. I mean, we can either take those that are in the site plan standards right now and transfer them, or maybe reevaluate that and come up with something else that would be appropriate for applying change in use for site plan.
I'm just sitting here thinking, so you have a property that currently needs 2 parking spaces, and they want to do something that needs 3. That's a 50% increase in parking, but it's only 1 parking space.
Right.
And do you want to trigger a site plan for that? Which I think is,
And that's why in site plan also, there is an actual number, 20% or 6, is something like that.
I saw the 6 in there
Okay.
too.
Yeah,
It's,
that does.
I just had a
That
couple
makes
questions. The first was the 20% of the existing floor area. In our town, it seems like people have built on that 20%, and then under the radar, or years go by, and then they want to increase the size of the existing when it was already added on to. I would think that at that point we would want to start looking at the property as a whole, going back and looking at those previous add-ons. Does that make, am I being clear there?
I understand what you're saying. Sometimes I don't know that I've never applied it that way. I've only looked at the current edition as opposed to going back to the original.
And I'm looking at.
I mean, some of that is almost impossible to know as
when
well.
I look at the Highway 50 corridor and I look at all of those buildings and the setbacks, how close they are and everything. If someone was to come in and say, well, this was the way it was, and I want to increase it by 20%, it shouldn't trigger any type of site plan or impact, how it impacts the other properties, I would almost want to look at it, go back and look at this and say, this particular building should have never made it to the point that it's at now. And again, I'm thinking it's some residences that are right there on Highway 50, and again, I don't know if that falls under here, but that would be my ultimate concern.
And we're basically talking about commercial and industrial.
Right. Okay, so if that doesn't affect those residential homes and those.
As long as they're being used residentially. Once they are used commercially, then I know what you're talking about.
And if it's beyond the scope of this, I just want, because there will come a time when people want to start doing something different with those particular properties, and I want to make it as objective as possible in all of this. And again, it goes back to Dennis's point. If it's by right, to a certain extent, it should be subjective at that point. All right, well, it's a restaurant or retail by right, you're allowed to have that. But I would say that, a quilt shop and a clothing store or whatever might have 2 totally different types of parking needs.
It's just another example. I can think of some of these buildings here that they may be used as residential units now. Somebody comes in, wants to put a restaurant in there. That's a use by right. Can you deny them a use by right if they can't provide parking?
In commercial, yes. Mm-hmm.
Then is it a use by right?
Well, yeah, it is.
That's
But
like, that's like saying
a-
you can change out your toilet, but you still have to have a permit in your house. I mean, you still have to mitigate, even though it's a use by right.
Well, let me answer this in another way too. Why would you open a restaurant where you can't provide parking? I mean, some of that is a business decision that happens.
Precisely.
So if you're not going to provide parking, what will happen is we will apply the parking standards, and we'll say, geez, you've got a site here where you can't provide parking. This is if it's in commercial as opposed to central business, because then you don't have a parking requirement. In the commercial district, we would end up saying, you can't provide your parking. So let's think of another way that you can do that, because we do have some things in our parking standards that allow you to park off-site within like 500 feet. You can accommodate about half of your parking if you want to. If they can do that, then that's something that can be looked at. Otherwise, it might be best if they look elsewhere for a restaurant site.
By right, I know, Jim. Just because it's a use by right doesn't mean it's not regulated. So you have parking standards, you have hazard mitigation, you have whatever. I mean, and I'll take an example out of Denver. Denver's not applying its parking standards very well, and we're building apartment buildings like crazy, and no one has any parking. So part of council's job is to also see the use by right on the property itself and that person's use of their property, but also the bigger picture and the impacts on the community as a whole. Have the big picture planning things to think about, and that's what those regulations do, even for uses by right. Connect to those major plans for the next 10 years, 20 years on down the road.
Are we afforded those things in the way that this is presented now? Afforded them. I mean, are we, is it in there so we can do it that way, is what I'm saying, I guess in plain English. I'm not a lawyer yet, but
Do it
I will
what
be
way?
soon. Do what now?
Do it what way? What do you mean?
No, what I'm saying is, we're talking about this, what triggers it, and do we have the ability to say, you know something, you don't have enough parking for this, or, you know, to in the community?
Right.
Is there a stopgap there to give us the authority to say, no, you can't do this here because of this?
Like Terry's talking about, yeah, like, so in the parking regulations, they're not, I mean, some of them are in the subdivision, some of them are gonna be in your zoning regulations, I believe, and they're gonna say, if you wanna use your property as a restaurant, you're gonna have X number of parking spaces. And until they do that, they're technically still not allowed to start that use.
So
I
the
mean,
protection's built in
we'd
there,
have to
is what
come
I was
in
asking,
and
yeah.
enforce it, but yeah, that protection is there, at least on the parking side of things, so.
I need clarification still. Don't laugh at them.
Clarification's
So,
good.
a home on XYZ Main Street, or Macon, burns down, and we wipe off the lot. That individual now will qualify under a site plan. Is that what you're telling me?
Not for a home. A home just
Well-
goes under your normal residential site planning through the building
Right.
department.
There
So this
is
is,
no
well, we're
special-
talking, I think, about commercial
No
and industrial.
special site planning is required for residential. There is a site plan associated with the building permit itself.
No,
No,
it's
it's-
in the building
And it's
code.
minor compared to what we're talking about.
So, single
tiny.
family duplexes, triplexes are not subject to the site plan process, as is right now, right? Yeah,
And we don't want to.
and we're not changing that.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Well,
We're
that'd
not
be in the
proposing
best
that.
interest.
But if that burned down, it was in the central business district, and they wanted to construct another business there as, let's say, they wanted to put up something that was a similar structure, but they wanted it to be a restaurant, they would go through site planning, this site planning
Let's say it was a
process.
shoe store,
Yes, they could do that too.
and
In the
the
central
shoe
business
store got
district.
wiped out, and we bladed off the lot, and now we're gonna build another shoe store by the same company, same owner, but we gotta start all over with exemptions, is that correct?
They would go through site planning. They would,
And they're gonna pay some of those exemptions.
Exactions. Yeah,
How do you justify that?
but they wouldn't
I don't
pay them,
understand
they
that.
wouldn't pay them again.
Oh, they wouldn't.
No.
Oh.
No. If it's the same use.
they've
and then-
already
Let's
paid
say they built a brand new shoe store this year, or well, prior, let's say it's only 20 years old, so it's prior to these regulations, and it burned down and they wanted to build a new one, but they had already paid a stormwater impact fee back in 2007. They're not going to pay another stormwater impact fee.
Let's say that they didn't pay an impact fee.
Then they would pay the stormwater impact fee.
Why are they paying a new impact fee when fundamentally with that particular lot, nothing has changed relative to storm impact?
Because they didn't pay in the first place.
Right. So
They didn't pay it the first time, but now they're doing that, so now they have to pay it this time. But if they paid it the first time, they don't have to pay again if they build the same thing. It's simplicity.
If they were to move it to another lot next door that
That's
was
different.
empty.
I mean, they're paying their monthly or quarterly storm fee.
that's a cost of service fee. That's different than development fee. That's different. Those are fundamentally different charges.
And every single lot in the city, at some point, if it is developed, will pay a system fee or a development fee.
Right.
Crazy
A
in my
one-time
opinion.
development fee.
I mean, there are homes that are old enough in this community that did not pay a water tap fee. They didn't. But if they wanted to build a new house, they had to buy a tap,
Tap's already there.
right?
The service is already there. I mean, how do you justify charging somebody for something that's already there and already been used?
Well, so here's, and you can disagree with this philosophically, but here's the concept, right? Is everybody pays their portion into the capital improvements of the system, whether it's stormwater or it's water. That's what that impact fee is for. It's for the
I understand
capital
that.
improvements. So there has to be a trigger for that. So it's either connection to the water main or it's
Already
development
connected.
of your property. And so that's the trigger. And so that's when you make your contribution into the system.
They're already connected.
They've been there for 15 years and they've
But
had a
that
building
doesn't mean
there.
they're
Yeah.
exempt from contributing to the.
Well, it's the wrong reason they're not exempted, because we're saying they're not exempt.
But the system will eventually need to be improved, right? So how do you pay for that improvement? Well, everybody pays their impact fee to pay their portion of that improvement. The water system can't exist without any improvements. That's the philosophy behind the impact fee.
So, given the philosophy, how is your concern that a property owner is going to be surprised with this at some point?
I'd be
Your business,
surprised.
for example.
Well, that's what I want to get. I mean,
mean, if
is
your
this a
business-
surprise that's going to catch someone off guard at some point that they're going to have to pay an $8,000 water tap fee that wasn't paid ever?
I think there's a home on, let's don't get off subject, but I think a home on Macon that got rebuilt, that we were gonna charge them a new water tap fee.
No.
Okay, Adam.
Because of
My
this
question though
concept.
is there something on the record of the property of whether that tap has been paid? I mean, these fees have been paid.
Yes. We track that.
Okay, and at what point does this come out? You know, maybe that's a question for Preston.
Part of the issue is, and we had this discussion this morning when we were talking to our utility rate consultant, stormwater, in the scheme of things, is new compared to water. It really is. The concept of having
Relative, yeah,
stormwater
right.
utilities, you know, it's 20, 30 years old, that concept. So that's a new thing for people to wrap their minds around, whereas everyone's used to paying for other utilities and paying for them, and paying system development fees for those utilities. So part of this is, so when you say, are you going to expect that? Is it going to be a surprise? 10 years from now, it should not be a surprise. It's not a surprise already that people pay these fees in bigger communities. People are getting used to this. It is a fairly new concept. It's 12 years old in the city. So
True, I asked my
That's-
sister who's
yeah.
getting her master's in city planning about these fees and the things and she's like, you guys are really having this discussion? This is like nothing. This is just standard.
So no one should be surprised about this. It's not going to catch anyone off guard, is what you're saying.
I can't answer for people. I'm saying that there people that are used to developing or are planning development properly should have an expectation to pay impact fees.
If I had to ask a question, how many properties do you think, grandiose number, general guess, in this town that have not paid a water tap fee? How many people are going to be, what's the
No,
potential?
we're not talking water tap fees. We're talking stormwater.
Okay.
So the way that the water system is absorbed, that there's a long history there. So that's that's like water under the bridge. So that's, it really is. We are not charging people water tap fees that have water taps. We are not doing that. So if there's some thought that that was happening, that's not happening. They're not buying a new water tap when their house burns down or their business burns down.
Whether or not they ever paid for a water tap.
Correct.
Okay, so that's my
that was my
understanding
comment.
here
Because
just
that's
a
been
minute ago.
handled, that was handled 50 years ago. That's water under the bridge. The stormwater is a new concept.
Well, in the conversation, I thought we said that in Jim's scenario, that if John Doe had his shoe store there for 25 years and it burned down,
He would pay a stormwater impact fee.
okay, but not for the
If
water
he's got a
tap.
water tap.
I
he's
heard
already-
water. All right, so let's
I
let
heard
water
water.
go then. All right, so we're over the water.
So we're on stormwater, not
We're back to
water tap.
stormwater.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes more sense.
And-
Because we had
And
the,
if you don't want to charge stormwater impact fees for existing structures that are replaced, you don't have to.
So let's put this in a little bit of perspective too, though, is that in our stormwater committee meetings, that Adam, based on previous studies that are probably out of date, so these numbers are very conservative, that if we just did stormwater impact fees to pay for our $55 million of infrastructure that needs to be updated and taken care of, depending on where you live, technically we should be paying fees per acre anywhere from $500 to over $20,000 per acre.
per
we-
year, or?
Is
No,
that
that's
for-
their fee.
One-time fee.
One-time
One-time.
payment. And so right now, we are charging, sometimes we are charging $750 an acre, and that's only for major new development. And a lot of times, most of the times, those get exempted. And so basically, we are almost never providing any money for development or impact infrastructure for our stormwater.
We've collected $81,000 to date in impact fees, and the amount of properties can be listed on one page.
Right, well, okay, well, I mean,
So
you
it's
kind of
not
make
that-
the case that I'm going to make is, we got $55 million in infrastructure improvements we need, and we're charging $750 an acre. We're never going to
Sometimes-
get there, and
sometimes
we're
we
never
are.
going to charge $20,000 an acre either. So, I mean, it's just a drop in the bucket, and it's a nuisance. I mean, I'd say just do away with it. I mean.
You'd have to have some sort of alternative plan.
Well,
to
the
pay for
alternative
infrastructure.
plan, and we're going to be talking about this, is examining the stormwater fee, the fee that's on your water bill that you pay every month. And, I mean, and you talk about stormwater impact fees, and I can speak for this personally, but, you know, it's the stormwater fee that you pay on your water bill is based on impervious surface. And there's a lot of conditions, particularly in commercial applications, where you are forced to create impervious surface that you maybe don't want, but you're forced to do it. And then for the life of that improvement, you're paying that stormwater fee on, you know,
X number of square feet or whatever.
on
Yeah.
an acre of paving that you were required to put in. When, I mean, I would argue there are other ways to provide parking that don't require paving.
Well, so
but-
we don't get, because we are going to have that discussion,
Right.
a lot more discussion about that, and we have some different ideas on how to charge those fees and that sort of stuff. So let's try to focus on just exactions in general. I mean, whether it's stormwater or traffic or whatever it is, I think we just need to focus on exactions in general and what level triggers that, and not get lost in what a specific fee is for and how we might structure that.
Okay.
So what I've read over here, this is existing with some change. Some minor changes here. And
I took like, under the site plans, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are existing, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I believe we're talking about eliminating all but the major site plan.
And exemptions.
So
I
out of
mean,
the four,
there will
3
be-
would be eliminated.
And then the
No.
extractions would be applied to the major site plans.
But where do these where do
Now-
these exemption things come in at?
Well, exemptions would still apply. So we would always look at a development that came in to see if it would be exempt from site plan. So if an addition didn't rise to the level of 20% of the floor area, it would be exempt. I mean, I'm just throwing these out as examples. If there wasn't an increase in parking above 20% of what's necessary or 6 additional spaces, it would be exempt from site plan. And then we have to go through whether a partial change of use or a complete change of use would trigger site plan. And we can make some suggestions around that as we go forward if you have some ideas about that. But there would definitely be exemptions, and we would apply certain standards.
It's just, me speaking, so the numbers we've talked about here are 20% or 6 parking spaces and 30% increase, I think, or 5,000 square feet increase in building size. Did I read that in here?
No, not 5,000 square feet.
That's,
You read,
might be.
oh, that's in the minor.
Minor's
Oh,
going
that's in
away.
the minor site
Minor's
plan.
going away.
Okay,
We're
so
suggesting
that's
to
gone.
remove that.
Dina had a suggestion on value threshold. We use that standard for floodplain regulations. So if there's an increase in value to the structure over a certain threshold.
Yeah,
Two other thoughts on this discussion. One, on the second component that Terry was walking you through in terms of a redeveloping site. And the first part of that she mentioned, talking about lot coverage. And maybe this is covered in a different place. I'm still getting up to speed and haven't been able to read through everything
Why not?
thoroughly yet. But the thought is, if you don't review a site that's being added onto through site plan review, is there another mechanism where it's being reviewed to make sure that it's still meeting minimum open space and setbacks? So, or is this the threshold that allows that to happen?
So-
Do you want me to answer that question? We have no minimum open space requirement, and setbacks are always looked at through the building permit site plan, always,
Okay.
anyway. So
Okay.
we would be doing that.
Okay, so that's covered. And then moving more to the exactions discussion, I guess I would equate that to, when you purchase a car or vehicle, right, for your personal vehicle, there's an upfront cost to purchase that vehicle. And you may pay it all at once, or you may make payments, but the point is there's an upfront cost of buying that vehicle. But yet you still are putting money in every year, right? You're putting gas in, you're spending money on oil changes. And so I think that might be another way to look at sort of the purpose of some of the exaction fees, is to make sure you're covering that upfront cost, not just the ongoing maintenance cost. That help.
Explain that same scenario with a person that's already got a water tap and has already been paying storm fees. How do you justify coming back and charging that individual a stormwater exaction, or whatever it's called?
Right, so I think Adam had clarified that the water taps are not what we're talking about here, right?
Okay, throw that off the
Stormwater.
table.
So we're talking specifically about stormwater. And from what I understand is that the exactions would be, it's because part of that discussion of many communities have been charging for stormwater improvements for many, many years now. This community is fairly recently starting to do that, and so the city is doing that through exaction. So it's a way to make sure that you can continue to build the system and maintain the system.
given the stormwater history, I'm comfortable with continuing to charge. It's 12 years old. We're behind the ball, or behind the curve on it anyway, Adam, correct? And anyone that's going to develop a property, that's something they need to
Is
consider.
going to expect that, except for, where we've got the threshold below 5. you know, somebody's coming to do it, then it's a little different story. But if they come in and they're gonna do this, and it's gonna be a, you know, $1 million or a $1.2 million building, they're going to expect that. I honestly,
There's two things I was hoping that we were going to be able to accomplish is, first of all, make it more objective so that staff can do their job, right? Because we
Right.
don't want another help head or situation where it's arbitrary. And second, and based on what I'm seeing here, it meets that need. I want developers and people that want to make improvements to have a comfortable level where, you know, they don't get in over their head, and we're not stymieing any development. So.
Yeah, okay. In the interest of making some progress here, the first thing we gotta decide, are we comfortable with eliminating all the site plans except for major site plans?
Yep.
Let's go down
We
the
talked
line.
about.
Frank? Yeah. I'm okay. Ashley? Jim?
no good.
Okay, we'll take that as a yes. Okay, and then, I guess then it comes down to exactly what exactions do we want?
Can I give a thought here? This has got to go through planning. A general layout of what, and then see what they come up with, because it gets hashed over pretty good there. And then review what they bring up, and without reinventing a bunch of wheels.
Do we have that authority?
Not the approving body. I mean, we can go to them and they can make a recommendation, but they're the ultimate approving body. You're not. So.
Our time to give them the direction of where we want to
Okay.
go.
Yeah. So that's what I think we're really looking
Okay,
for
so I had,
today.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
My bad.
It's, we're doing this backwards, so everybody's kind of thrown off by it, so.
Okay, because I thought it would have to go to planning and then come to council for,
Housed or
Okay.
amended by the planning commission and approved by them.
alrighty then. First time I've been wrong today. Maybe.
Well, I think the intent, I thought at the time, was to be able, so that we don't have abandoned buildings and sites and things like that, which just can't be used, or it would be financially or uneconomical to do something. You know, I'd like to have an example. I would like to be able to present you with a building and see how the new stuff would work. Is that fair? Because the fear I have, that's going to come back to council, and they're going to be complaining, you can't do a damn thing with the building because of what we've done. I either want more time, or I'd like to have examples that you could show me whether things can be done.
I was actually thinking, I don't know that we have so many site plans that we couldn't give you a quick analysis on what we've already done and how it would apply.
That would be nice.
That
Ones that you've already done. You know, I'd run in my business to where, not only here, but also in the county, all of a sudden we need a drainage basin. What's that all about? That can't be done. The site's unusable. And then the city turns around and sells it for a building lot. I don't know how that happened. So I'm not comfortable with doing this right now. I would like Adam to do that.
Not
Whether it's
me.
Hale Pet Door or.
No, I would
Just an
appreciate just a
idea.
little more education
Show me.
before I go tell someone to buy a
Show me
downtown building.
show me from previous, if you want to call it exactions. I don't do this for a living. You do. You're the pros.
I'll delegate
You
it.
teach us. Okay? What?
No, I think that's, we have a lot of what ifs, and I think it would be good to use real examples so that you guys see how it works or doesn't work.
That'd be
It
great.
makes sense.
I'd appreciate that.
And if you want to come up with a scenario,
Pardon?
why don't, give us a scenario
Okay.
also.
Like a
Something that
subject
we can
property or
apply, a
Okay.
piece of property, a
You
vacant
show me yours,
building
I'll
or
show you
something.
mine.
There you go. Give us a scenario.
All right.
Apply it as best we can.
Okay, so the plan is, you're going to take some
Previous.
real examples, show us how these new regulations would apply to the real examples, either pending or past, and see how it would possibly affect the outcome.
But are we going to leave it with regards just to the major site plan? Because we said we're all good with eliminating the other three?
Yes,
Okay.
I
Okay.
believe we have a consensus
Okay.
there.
All right.
Okay.
So we'll use the current threshold.
Okay.
For what would be major and what would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, we're
The
gonna,
current site plan?
we'll
Or
take
the
our,
suggestions?
Yeah, so what we do is, we need a bunch of scenarios. We need ones that would fall under the exemptions, one that would fall under the major, based upon the site plan exemption thresholds that are in the code now. Because they're not giving us new ones right now.
Okay.
And maybe
Right.
that'll help you filter through those thresholds and what you really want to see.
right.
It's a visual thing.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, we can do that.
So you want a chart too, then you're saying? And a pie graph, right?
No,
we do
no,
this and not
that's
use any
Harry's
paper
job.
clips?
Right-hand glossies.
Harry does the pie graphs, or whatever those things are.
We need any more clarification on where we're headed here at this moment
I think it's a good way to head.
before we move on.
Well, I
Okay.
think we need to talk about subdivisions real quickly. That's an
Okay.
easier topic.
Yep, okay.
Part of the reason why that's in here is some of what we talked about before maybe wasn't as fully discussed, and I just wanted to make sure council was aware of what constitutes the major, which is dedication of a public right-of-way, greater than 10 acres or more than 5 lots. And then a minor subdivision is, it's been previously platted, there's no public right-of-way dedication, the entire tract is 10 acres or less, the resulting subdivision is 5 or fewer, and there's no exceptions to the subdivision design standards. But it's also got this quirky option too, which is the property to be subdivided does not meet the specific purpose or criteria for subdivision exemption or major subdivisions of these regulations. I don't like that personally. I think that's very vague. I don't know how Terry feels. She's the one that's been applying it. So, and then there's a list of subdivision exemptions, which is like lot line adjustments, creating, consolidating lots, that kind of thing. And so the conversation last time was only major subdivisions would be subject to all the exactions we've been talking about. So minor, like I own 2 lots and I want to split them and build 2 houses, that wouldn't be subject to the exaction process, so.
And let me,
Back examples of that, but it's a little bit more straightforward.
I would like to clarify that with you too. What, if you're suggesting just using major for exactions, then you're also would allow the creation of up to 5 lots without any exactions.
Like a lot of lots.
I thought Adam gave us a reason why we needed to use 5.
That's what's in the code now.
Right.
That's what's
So
current.
there's,
No,
no, is, but
And how many
is
years has that
is
been
it
in the code and
reasonable
working?
to not have those exactions when you are creating that many lots?
Because I thought we had a discussion about, 1 and 2 lots, but then you had some reasoning that 5 made sense. Does that not ring a bell?
Well, 5 is,
That's a planning thing.
that
I think
threshold,
that's an engineering
that
thing.
threshold has been there forever.
That
So a
doesn't matter.
major site plan is more than 5 lots. A minor is between 2 and 5. And a subdivision exemption, which went in not too long ago, which was a very nice thing for the city to do, to allow someone to create 1 additional lot through the subdivision exemption process. And that process, we have decided, I think, that we would no longer have any exactions on. But that, it's that one between, it's that creation of 2 to 5, which is
think-
the minor subdivision that I still have a question
Our current code is
about.
based off the model land use code, and I'm sure it came out of there, and I'm sure some people that are way smarter that had a lot of time in their hands equated that somehow to some kind of impact, whether it was traffic, runoff, or something.
The 5.
Yeah,
We had a discussion about the 5, and you convinced me that 5 made sense.
it's good.
So you had to do a
just
heck of a
be
job.
You
convinced.
don't really want to
You
change
gotta pick
it.
something. Yeah, and it's 5. I think 5's good, and from what we see, I mean, 5 even for minor is rare. I mean, what we've seen more of lately is exemptions. The 2 lot or moving lines around. And I can tell you just in the last couple of weeks in those applications, since we've kind of stood down a little bit on these exactions, they've gone very smooth.
If it works, don't fix it.
Anna, did you have
Yeah.
something you wanted to?
She looked like she wanted to
Yeah.
say something.
One thought on the minor subdivision as I'm reading this language. Maybe a simple modification regarding the exactions is adding a clause to option 1I, where it says the property has been previously platted within the city, and tie something in there. Obviously, if they've previously paid exactions, you don't want them to pay twice. So maybe it's allowing the exactions to still trigger or occur within a minor subdivision, but just clarifying that if they've already been paid, that they're obviously not going to pay them again. Just
That's for monetary exactions. That wouldn't be true of street improvements and things like that, because you could be previously platted into two large lots, and then subdivided into 20, and they could say, well, you already told us we didn't have to build curb and gutter when we were 2 lots, but now we do because we're 20 lots. So that would, for monetary exactions, yeah, I agree with that. But even to that extent, you could have trouble with traffic impacts and stuff. So we could come up with something to make sure they don't get double dinged.
That's fine. I do have a problem with this previous platting. I think it's immaterial to the creation of five lots. It doesn't matter whether it's been platted or not. And also, the 10-acre threshold makes no sense either. It doesn't matter. You can be creating very small, I mean, we allow very small lots to be created, and 5 lots could be less than an acre.
Most communities have done away with the actual, like, acreage requirement and just made it lot.
Maybe while we go through this, we can make some suggestions around that make this more workable as well.
Appreciate all your work and effort on this, Terry.
You're very welcome, Mr. Meisner.
All right, is anyone or everyone clear on the subdivisions? Not entirely clear, but that's, you're good, Scott?
We're gonna
Good start.
get more
Good
clar-
start.
We're gonna get more clarification in the future, right? That's
Okay.
what we're anticipating.
I think,
Every time we
we're
meet.
looking at not applying exactions to exemptions, subdivision exemptions, and then maybe tweaking minors so there's a little more discretion built in, is what I'm hearing, and then it would apply to major subdivisions. But we can bring that back when we bring back examples for the
Sure.
site plan and kind of bullet point what we're looking at, so.
Got it.
I think we want to get the process changed, but we don't need to change it overnight. I mean, we need to make for sure that where we're going, it makes sense for the city and for developers, contractors, and everybody involved, so. In closing, I would like to congratulate Catherine. I assume that's who wrote this famous document. Of all the reading material I've had since I've been on council, this is probably tops.
Ow, okay.
Man.
That's a really big compliment coming from you.
I read it twice, and I'm not sure I still understand.
General government. You want your stuff brought back?
I'm not that intelligent, and I understood it.
To
And I
be-
read the old stuff first, too, the other night, so.
Okay, our next general government meeting is June
Thanks, folks.
7th. Can we talk about this some more at that meeting?
I think we need to go to PC first. Between coming back to you guys, we need to start the
Need to get
process.
direction from the council, because the planning commission adopts. So they need to get direction from this group as to what your intentions are and what the will of the council is.
Not good enough tonight? Okay.
It's,
Is there
One
any,
more shot at this.
And when would you like to bring it back, the next
think
general?
June is
well, you
seventh.
know, that brings up an interesting question, though. I mean, before the planning commission makes their decision, I mean, do we want to know?
can we
what-
look at it? Yeah.
Yeah, do we
Why
want to?
don't you just finish the process and give them a package that they can digest, rather than something half-baked? think it's gonna create more confusion.
No, I think he's talking about like after planning commission looks at it, can they get one more like glance at it before planning commission makes their?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want, the planning commission might come up with something really weird.
We would have to have a
And we
workshop
have-
with them first. So probably between their workshop and their meeting to adopt, we should come back if anything weird has happened.
Yeah.
We couldn't change anyways, right?
You could fire them
Once
all.
they adopt it, no.
I mean,
You
if
can
they, if
amend
they
your
want to adopt
code,
it, that's
you
their
can amend
choice.
your code and have council be the adopting
Yeah, if
body
you don't
and,
like it.
and then you can come in and
Yeah,
change
yeah,
whatever you'd
yeah,
like.
yeah.
Because
There
I
you
get
go.
a little concerned
Okay.
when I read your second from the last paragraph, which is what we're talking about. Is that not correct? Well, that's exactly what you're talking about, is the
Yeah.
council has no authority.
Yeah.
Not currently, no.
But I think it's important to give the planning commission what you have in mind
Yeah.
and make it crystal clear to them.
Like the marijuana.
Okay,
Yeah.
This is what we
exactly,
want.
Exactly. And they
All
did a
right.
good job with that.
all right, so we'll talk about, go ahead.
I just want to also remind you that in the meantime, pending legislation, we are applying no exactions for any minor site planning or subdivisions.
I think we know that's pretty much a constant in the decided
So I want to make sure
thing.
you're aware that we're still doing it.
Okay.
We decided a month ago. Yep.
All right, moving on to the next item. Jim and Ashley, Centennial Mountain View Park Committee
Now
recommendations.
let's invite Rex up to the table.
Yeah, come on, Rex. We don't have a visual up there, huh?
Plan, so Mary,
How many trees did you cut down for that?
Just two.
Rex does not cut down trees. Unless-
Things that we talked about at yesterday's meeting, he's already got that.
The map's in the back,
I have a big map that we can.
big map. Do we have any kind of stand we can put that? Have anything we can put that map on, Kathy? Nope?
You can just hold it and walk it back like, you can just nano-wide it. Nano-wide it.
Does the mayor get one?
That is the strangest stapling job I've ever seen.
Hey, that's the colored one. That does.
Hot damn.
Look at this. Who were they stapled mine?
You know what, the stapler was funky this week. I got one that was stapled right in the middle. I'm, not this one, but another one that I came up
Folds
with.
their pages down to the right. That's, okay.
General consensus of the committee?
maybe while Rex is getting things set up, I'll just give you some background on our committee. We had about 15 people go over this plan, including city members, some from county, kids, adults, rafting, sports.
Rotary
Yeah,
Club
the
was
Rotary
there.
Club as well.
Mhm.
Rotary had 2 representatives.
Recreation District.
It was a pretty wide variety. A lot of discussion was given, a lot of lively discussion at times. And in the end, I think at the end, pretty much everybody felt like they really came up with a really good consensus and plan. And hopefully it'll address some of the concerns that some people may have.
Yeah, and this is basically the final draft. We had a meeting yesterday and talked about a few things that we'd like to see different. And those changes have been made, those revisions have been made on this plan. So a lot of them were to do with the phasing. Some of the phasing, like in phase number 1, it had a section of the East Road that will be taken out, but it appeared to be being taken out in phase 1, which it wouldn't be. So we've clarified the phases for phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. So that's how that will go. Overall, you know, the committee was pleased. I was pleased with the committee themselves. I think they did a great job in getting this plan, and this was put on a fast track so we could get this done this year. So what we've come up with and what Mary Hart has came up with, I think is, I think this is going to be a very, very special place when it's finished.
Can we comment?
Want to kind of walk through some of the phases and stuff?
Help, Rex?
This is phase 1, whether the funds to and that's basically in the gravel area that now exists at Centennial. Creating more parking, a one-way entrance into the park space. A lot of people talk about losing that parking.
You also point out other potential spots for parking at the south side of the park and on 4th Street. Way down by the baseball field.
4th Street, they thought about, there's plenty of.
Many more parking spaces just south of the softball field. Down, keep going all the way down.
20 parking
On
spots.
Griffin.
Yeah. Felt it was important to take out that north road for several reasons. One is what Mary and the committee would call is the rivers are beachfront property. And right now that road is very industrial, not only industrial, but it's blocking us being able to connect the enjoyment and the entertainment of the park all the way to the river. And not only that, also danger as far as little children that are always running from river to park back and forth. Was a concern as well. We also took into consideration the placement of the splash pad in the park. There's concern with at first it was built right by the duck pond, and there are a lot of folks, and often people will say, how can you have a splash pad right by a duck pond? And so we did do some research and found that ducks do not like splash pads because, well, according to several other cities that have the same outline in their parks that have had it for many years, they don't like splash pads because of the activity that's taking place there, and also it's chemically treated water. They do not like the chemically treated water. And because it is chemically treated, it is important to know that it is taken, the sanitation and the cleanliness of that water is taken as seriously as if it was a swimming pool. Some systems, I'm wondering if most of, if not all of them, read the pH balances at all times of the water, and if it ever gets past a safe level, it automatically shuts down the entire splash pad. Yeah.
Curious, how many gallons is that? Just curiosity on my part. About.
I believe the holding tank is going to be.
I was thinking, 75,000 gallons or something, and it's not even near that. Yeah.
We're going to be mimicking the river with our splash pad in our park too. Mimicking the river as far as the theme.
Right.
And let me ask a question, and I guess you two could probably answer it best, but Jim Horn, Kyle Horn with the Rec District, and then the Warren, I guess, with WKRP. Are they comfortable with this? Presumably the Whitewater Festival is going to continue to take place in Centennial Park.
Yes, and we gave great thought to accommodating both the Whitewater Festival and the Blossom Festival, and that's where we really needed to think to the future and also for its growth there. So part of that is also putting in electricity there, potential stage sites, and also you can't tell on the chart, but the duck pond will actually be moved again. So, because right now it's kind of taking up some of that beachfront property, and so in the future we'll actually push it back a little bit more to allow a little bit more space at the river, so that the Whitewater Festival, there's more seating and space for the audience to be able to enjoy the show that takes place on the river.
And I've been working.
Tony, too late.
And currently, this is on. Currently, our power is located right here. I've been talking to Black.
And for WKRP is also really important that we made some improvements for the take-in and take-out at the duck pond, and so that was taken into consideration and accommodated, as well as in the river itself, working with them to develop the kids' little waiting area to make it even more safe.
Okay. Frank, I think you had some questions or comments?
Well, I mean, I don't know what time it's going to go, but the only thing that I'm concerned with this whole thing is the area where we're going to put for a dog park. Okay? And the only reason I'm concerned about that is because we have enough problem. We've been talking about the problems we have on the trails with no one picking up the poop and everything else. And then you go to some of the parks like in Pueblo, like in Denver, like in Colorado Springs, where they've had dog parks and they go good for a while, and then they have to completely shut them down to clean up because nobody picks up there. And I think that would actually hurt Veterans Park to have the dog park there, because if that gets full, then guess where the smell goes? It goes everywhere. So everything else of the concept I think is beautiful, with the exception of that area for the dog park. And that's my reasoning for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I agree.
Part of the thought process in the dog park there also was giving people a positive place where they can go take their dogs to let them run off leash. And number two, we have a lot of people who travel through town as visitors in their RVs with dogs. They're looking for a place to stop, to let their dogs out and get a little bit of exercise.
Yeah, and I understand that, but like I say, I mean, there hasn't been anywhere you can look at anywhere that it's been a completely positive mood with regards to dog parks. I don't care what town you go to, okay? But yeah, they start off at the beginning and they are nice, okay? But as time progresses, each and every one of them, and then the cleanup for some of them has been, quite expensive. And that's my only reasoning for that. And I agree, maybe we could look at something else for that area that we can use, because I know we don't use it a lot.
Yeah, it is underutilized.
But I'd hate to see that go in there for that. And I'm not, we have dogs, we take care of our dog, and we walk them on the trail, and we have our poop bag with us, but 90% of the people that walk their dogs do not pick up after them.
Agreed.
Come to the library and look at the library.
well, as far as, again, that's all just kind of wish list, long-term vision. So
Absolutely,
we don't
it
need to
is.
Focus too much on that.
I don't think it's even on the
Our
phase.
focus basically is this first phase.
I like that.
And then we can, as we expand there, there's a possibility that we're going to have to move the sewer line, which actually runs right about through here and through the duck pond. And they're talking about moving it onto this existing road and then back to the east there. So there's things we're going to have to deal with as this evolves, but it's fluid and it's going to evolve as we move ahead on it. But this was our main focus as the Parks Committee, was to get this, well, of course, all the master plan was, but this was our first priority as number one, because we have the funding to do this, and this is what we were wanting to do.
So my quick question, really quick, is, again, Ashley kind of summarized, we had a lot of public input. We talked about the Blossom and the Whitewater Festivals utilizing that. Given this, you're ready to go, and when would you start on that?
The RFPs are going out this week. So if, you adopt it on the 15th, then I've had the RFPs ready to go for some time now, and I've had to keep changing them as this progressed. So, but I think we're pretty close to getting everything ready to go, and put out the RFP for the new splash pad and the playground and of course the pavilion. And I'm hoping what will happen here, we'll still have power all the way around the park, but if we can afford to get a big enough pavilion, it could kind of double as a stage area, and possibly, those music events will move here. And then they've got this big event lawn, and it'll be surrounded by either concrete or crusher-fine pathways where vendors can set up all the way around this event area. And just, you know, that becomes our event area, and it's closer to the river, closer to the beachfront, as Mary calls it.
Keep in mind that we're really looking at multiple plans here, or at least 2 plans, because phase 1 of the river corridor plan was Centennial Park. So that's really what we concentrated on. You see a lot of other river corridor master plan suggestions that are kind of outside that park. But to get the concept, a lot of those things are shown here, but they're really not part of the Centennial Park process.
Right, they'll all work together as this develops.
And in particular, that 3rd Street issue, I mean, obviously, that's going to be an issue with a number of people in terms of how do we do that, and how does that mix or conflict with Kathy's pedestrian crossing
The
plan,
crossing, yeah.
and how does that whole thing work? Additionally, I checked with Chief DeVecchio. He was concerned about the size of the pavilion in terms of what requirements that meant in terms of access for that, and he's doing some checking on that. And he was also concerned in terms of, it's difficult from the drawings to see whether, particularly on both ends of those parking lots, whether fire departments can make turnarounds without backing up.
Right, and this will be sized to accommodate that, to accommodate any emergency vehicles. It looks a little small for that purpose right now, but it, you know, as we develop this plan, that would certainly take that into consideration. But I'm a little bit confused on the pavilion size.
They're checking on, one, they weren't sure in terms of exactly what the pavilion structure was going to be, and then once they determined what the structure was going to be, then there's size limitations in terms of what those requirements would be.
Mm-hmm.
And he had mentioned that there would have to be 150-foot access. And I don't know that distance between the edge of the parking lot and the pavilion meets that requirement, but he was doing some checking under those things.
Okay, yeah, that'd certainly be good to know before we place that, so. But it, you know, this map is 1 to 50, so it's real close to about that. And we can make some adjustments if we need to.
All right, Kathy, quickly.
Rex, 2 things. I have had probably over 150 people stop at 5th and Macon to tell me that for the first time since they've lived here, they have a duck park to be proud of. That is gorgeous. Second thing, visitors cabin in Veterans Park is kind of lost. Where's the parking going to be for that? And is there some way we can emphasize that with all the beauty around it and
the parking in Veterans Park?
Well, right now, yeah. And if you go by there, just about any given time, once the cabin is open, the visitors cabin, you've got anywhere from 2 to 12 cars parked around there. Is there anything on the plan that either gives them some separate parking or accentuates that they're there? Besides the dog park, which I agree with Frank, I think that's a great big mistake. But
Well, she
for right now,
shows on the
visitors-
plan here that, you know, diagonal parking on this south side of the Veterans Park.
Okay.
But, you know, if it comes to that, with this area that's never been used before, we could probably come up
parking?
with some parking there, just right close to that,
Okay.
right close to the
All right, and then-
visitor's cabin.
Is there any update on the Mountain View Park? Or,
Well, before we move to Mountain View, I just want to point out too that the committee actually, I think for the most part, is pretty excited about the connection to downtown. That was something that the engineering company came up with that Macon Plaza and the Bell Tower and turning that into a plaza, which would also have some play features and other features where people would want to spend some time, bring their families. And it connects, you know, something that'll be, you know, their flagship park to the downtown and vice versa. But we didn't include that in our phases because we felt it was more appropriate in the River Corridor plan. Number 1. Number 2, we really wanted this project to be kind of a feel-good, happy plan, and that section might have a little bit more of some controversy.
I know the Highway 50 Committee, the Pedestrian Crosswalk Committee, when we saw the plan, what we had done for our mid-block pedestrian crossings was the contrasting brick or some type of contrasting color. And when you guys came up with that, we thought you were snooping on our meetings because it totally coincided with what we had talked about for our crosswalks. So by doing it that way, it even included that on Highway 50 to make it look consolidated with the parks and downtown. It was a good idea.
Okay, and before we move on to Mountain View, I do want to commend the committee. I think this is
Yeah.
an absolutely outstanding result. It's, I can't wait until next summer.
I've been waiting for this to come along for about 20 years now, so I'm
Right.
very excited about this. I think once this is finished, this will be it'll be talked about around the entire state. People will want to come here to see this.
Can we all
So-
put our handprints in the splash pad concrete? With the date?
Absolutely not.
So as far as the splash pad, we are truly thankful to the Rotary Club for their $50,000
Absolutely.
contribution.
$50,000 that they
I
gave to
think
us for that.
Castle
To the
Rock,
pump
was
on
it?
their part.
Yeah. Did Castle Rock, did they say they built one splash pad? It was so incredibly popular. They built 2 splash pads. That was still so incredibly popular that now they're up to 3 splash pads.
I think we need one at Macon Plaza too, still. I haven't let that go yet.
So, and that's a good point, is that right now we just have enough money to do part of Phase 1, and so you might want to think in the future of committing funds to continuing to complete the plan.
And what's great about, the money that the city has committed to this Phase 1, we can use that as match money to apply for grants for Phase 2, Phase 3 as this progresses, so.
Especially if they
that's-
see what's been done or what's been
Absolutely.
accomplished, yeah.
Yep,
And how much
absolutely.
it's used.
So,
All right.
yeah,
Well-
this is going to be really, really an outstanding park when it's
Epic.
finished.
An epic
It'll be something
event.
for the entire community to be proud of.
Okay, Rex, thank you for that.
You betcha.
And now Mountain View?
Ashley, do you want me to do it, or?
Go for it, Rex.
Okay. We met at Mountain View Park to talk about improvements that we wanted to see up there. And basically, the committee came to the conclusion that we want to take the skate park. Right now, it has a crusher fine border that goes around the entire park. Crusher fines are always getting kicked up onto the skating surface, and then it makes it difficult for kids to skate, and that kind of stops their skateboard safety issue. So we'll take that perimeter and concrete that so the entire thing is skatable, and there's no debris on the skate park itself. So that was kind of number 1. 2, well, according to Ashley, number 1 was to fix up the restrooms a little bit and at least get some privacy stalls in there. You walk in and you're just kind of exposed. So we'll work on that. We also want to get new picnic tables all the way through the park, 10, 12, 13 of them, with the extruded metal tables versus the wood tables that the kids can skate on and grind on, and we're constantly scraping splinters off of there and repainting those tables. So we'll replace the tables, do some landscaping, planting of trees of course we don't have a map of it, but along the soccer fields that exist up there. Kind of give them a little windbreak and a little break from the sun in the summertime. And also do some new entry signage into the park. The existing signage is kind of old and faded and outdated, and so we're gonna, we'll work with our wayfinding committee to come up with that concept. And basically that was, am I missing anything in Mountain View?
No, I think the only point left is that we actually had budgeted quite a bit more money to improve the soccer fields out there. And I think the consensus is they would prefer, instead of making Mountain View better, or the soccer fields there, which actually would need considerable financial help to do that, is to move it downtown to potentially at the Duck Park or at another downtown location, because that's where the competitive soccer games take place, where 16 different cities from around the state of Colorado or even Wyoming come to Canyon City. And if we can bring those folks downtown where they can see our beautiful park, our train, all the other things, and the river rafters coming right through the middle of town, that would be a much better way to show them what Canyon City really is about and bring more families and more people from outside to our downtown area.
Yeah, and one other improvement we're going to make at Mountain View, and hopefully we can make this at Rudd Park and Centennial Park, but is to replace the metal halide lighting over the skate park with LED lighting. It's a lot more energy efficient, a lot brighter and a lot nicer and lasts a lot. It's such a pain when those go out. We have to go rent a lift from Canyon Rental and go there and change these 1,000-watt metal halide bulbs that burn so much energy. So I was really surprised at the price that I got some preliminary pricing on switching that out to LEDs, and it was very, very reasonable. So I think that would be a good investment to make, not only at Mountain View Park, but at Rudd Park and Centennial Park.
All right. Well, thank you. Committee people, Rex.
goodness, yes.
I mean, like I said,
I hope our committee will be here on Monday when we adopt it, so we can recognize them for their
okay,
work.
terrific. Okay, moving on to the next item, the Charter Review Committee. Tony, what do you got to say?
Well, as in the case of all cities, it's always good to review your charter, probably on at least a 10-year cycle. I think it's been at least that long since the city reviewed its charter, so we're suggesting perhaps you want to create another citizens committee to review that. Probably don't have a time frame to get it on a 217 ballot, but certainly for 218. But it's an antiquated charter, and it needs review, and it'd be good to have a committee do that and prioritize, because all these changes would require a vote of the public, so at best, you can probably only take a couple at a time. So it'd be a long process, but an important one.
Yeah. For those who remember, the last time we tried a comprehensive review, I think there was 8 or 10 items on the ballot.
Yeah,
and they all failed, every one. So I think that's
Couple at a
probably a good
time.
approach.
Yeah.
We got Catherine now.
Got Corey, he
Corey.
loves to amend charters.
Corey's been itching to do this.
Okay. Well, is everyone comfortable with going ahead with the Charter Review Committee?
We can bring that back to you at an upcoming council meeting so you can initiate that process. We can advertise and solicit people to be part of that and give them a mission.
Okay. Finally, it looks like most of the staff has left. Tony, do you have any updates that you want to share? Anything from the council?
Just another thank you to Rex over there. Thank you, Rex.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Rex.
All right,
And
well,
you
if there's
guys,
nothing
a lot of
else,
work into it.
we're adjourned.